How's the sound? Okay, great. Hello everyone. It's so nice to see a whole bunch of young people here today. So the message for today is titled Cultivating a Down-to-Earth Curiosity. And it was inspired by a radio show that my husband and I heard when we were on a recent road trip. We listened to an episode of The Daily by the New York Times. Anyone listen to that show? In that episode, the host, Rachel Abrams, she was sitting down with the 4 astronauts from the Artemis II mission. Maybe you've heard that episode. And what was so wonderful about that interview, which I'm sure you've all heard or seen interviews with those astronauts everywhere. I haven't seen a ton of them because I don't have a TV, but I understand that they probably became very famous this past month. But what I loved about it was that they, in advance of the episode, they invited children to record voice memos of their most pressing questions to the astronauts. And they played some of these voice memos during the program and asked some of the astronauts to answer some of these questions. And it was so cool to hear, like, in the children's own voices, in their own words, they're very curious questions about space and space travel and what it's like to be an astronaut. Their questions ranged, as you can imagine, all over the place, from if there are pizza parties and pop in space to what space dreams are like. Do space dreams include gravity? I thought that was a lovely question. Is space lonely? And what is the most beautiful thing in space? Of course, it wouldn't have been a series of questions from kids if it didn't include the ever popular topic, poop. There were a lot of questions on that topic. I thought it was just a very fun and playful listen, and really appreciated hearing how the astronauts received those questions from young people. As space is such a mystery, really, to us all, and a curiosity to humans as we try to imagine anything beyond what we actually experience all the time and perhaps take for granted, and to feel that mystery and curiosity through the eyes of a child. And before I go any farther, I really want to confess that I tend to be critical of space travel, or rather, I'm critical of the budget that we afford to space travel that could be invested in so many valuable and needed things here on Earth to sustain our precious Earth. But hearing what was learned, what is being learned, and hearing the sense of awe and reverence in the voices of the astronauts, and seeing the images that were produced by their journey really does help me to tap into a sense of curiosity about what is beyond our Earth. For example, regarding space-time and the possibility of life elsewhere, which I can't even possibly pretend to understand, astronaut Jeremy Hansen provided this scenario, and I'm paraphrasing. When we look up into the night sky, everything that we see, every star that we see, is in our galaxy, the Milky Way. But there may be a couple trillion other galaxies out there. And if we just focus on our closest neighboring galaxy, Andromeda, which we can see when we look up at the night sky in the constellation shaped like a W, Cassiopeia. At the bottom of one of those W's off the end there is Andromeda. If we just look at Andromeda, our neighboring galaxy, and he says, let's just say that there's an amazing civilization there. They have the most extraordinary telescopes, and they're looking at us on Earth right now while we're gathered right here. But they don't see us. Why not? Because they see Earth a couple 100,000 years ago, and we're not here. So he says it would be strange to think that there isn't life out there somewhere else, but this sort of time warp that we're in makes it really hard to experience that in our real time. I thought that was pretty amazing. Astronauts, as many of you are aware, often experience this profound sense of awe and wonder when they see Earth from the vastness of space. And if you want to just put up that first slide, Juxta, this image this was from one of the astronauts from this Artemis II mission, seeing our Earth in the thin veil of atmosphere that surrounds it, that's held in by gravity that allows us to actually live here. When they return to Earth, they often feel this transformative feeling and a sense of responsibility. And this perspective shift is called the overview effect. But the overview effect doesn't always produce a sense of joy. And for some, like William Shatner, Captain Kirk from Star Trek, who got to go up to space some years ago, it produced a profound sense of grief. And he said he wept for the Earth because he realized it's dying. He told an NPR reporter, I saw more clearly than I have with all the studying and reading that I've done, the writhing, slow death of the Earth, and we on it. In astronaut Christina Koch's words, when you look out and you see the Earth, tiny little Earth, and you mostly see the blackness around it, you recognize what a completely unlikely scenario this is and how precious it is. We have a choice what to do with that. So you can, yeah, great. So what do we humans do with that? And how can those of us who won't be traveling to space anytime soon cultivate a curiosity, an awe, and a sense of responsibility right here on Earth? When asked what qualities astronaut hopeful kids could cultivate, astronaut Reed Weissman oriented kids' awareness earthward. Walk outside, he said, look at a tree, watch a bird fly, watch water go around rocks as it's coming down a waterfall or a stream. Something so simple, so profound. Similarly, astronaut Victor Glover gave this homework. The next time you see something in bloom or growing out of the ground, just stop for a second and look at it. Just be impressed. Be impressed by it. Sometimes, he said, you have to leave and then come back to realize the simplest thing can be the most impressive thing you've seen all week. In advance of this message, if you read the digest, I invited us all to take up astronaut Glover's homework, to stop and look at a thing, look at something growing out of the ground, and let yourself be impressed. How did that go for you, I wonder? What did you experience? And if you didn't take up that exercise, can you think right now of a moment when you did stop and just take in a thing and let yourself be amazed by it? Let yourself see it, really see it for the very first time. An experience I recently had letting myself be impressed by something was on one of our destinations on our recent road trip. We were visiting my cousin and her daughter in near the coast of southern Maine. And one day near low tide, she took us out to a tidal estuary to harvest blue mussels. And you can put up the next slide, Juxta. As we squatted along the newly exposed rocks, there we are, the two of us, of the intertidal zone, each of us with our orange bucket, I became enamored by the ever-changing landscape, the diversity of algae and beings living on a single rock. Next slide. The closer I looked, the more the rocks came alive. Among the gobs of blue mussels cemented to them by their fibrous beards. Next slide. My cousin identified barnacles, periwinkle snails, a few limpets, seaweeds, and certainly countless other beings. In the flowing water receding toward the ocean, seaweeds were waving and dancing downstream. It was just marvelous. And it was possible for me to feel this because it's not my home environment. It was new. And you can let go of the slides. Thank you. While I could hear mussels plunking into her bucket, I was mostly stunned, studying them, thanking them, and needing to experience their life before extinguishing it for mine. I eventually settled into a dense mussel bed and did my part. Then I watched as she carefully rinsed the mussels with estuary water and transferred them to a fresh bucket of their own brackish medium. She too was in her element, and I was impressed by this also. I sensed that what the astronauts were encouraging us all to touch into is the power and the intimacy of curiosity in our culture that elevates conceptual, intellectual knowledge, touching into an intimacy with life that naturally calls us to act on behalf of. The brilliance of having that radio episode driven by the curiosity of children is that children live from experiential knowledge and curiosity before they learn otherwise. I find it interesting that, at least in my understanding, space exploration seems to be knowledge-driven, and yet a remarkable thing gained by those who experience it is the felt experience, the intimacy, the otherworldliness, the smallness, the vastness, an invitation into awe and wonder and curiosity of the marvels of life that we take for granted in the nitty-gritty of daily life here on earth, but which dawns on one looking at our tiny blue planet in the midst of darkness and the absence of gravity. Recall astronaut Glover's remarks. Sometimes you have to leave and then come back to realize the simplest thing can be the most impressive thing you've seen all week. So can we have a transcendent experience and feel our smallness, our finitude, our interconnectedness, our delicate place in the cosmos every once in a while? The unlikeliness of this scenario of us all just being here alive, glued to the earth, able to gather and ponder such things as space? Can we cultivate a bright side of the moon curiosity, a down-home, down-to-earth curiosity and sense of awe? I tend to think this is what spiritual, mystical, religious, or ethical practice offers. And not as a way out of life, but as a way in. Zen priest Shinshu Roberts says, our daily life and our spiritual life are the same. Can we live into the sacred every day? Any day? On Sunday, perhaps? Can we experience, or at least recall, the overview effect from the underview? That sense of lying on the earth and feeling it move around the sun. Can we experience the magnificent precariousness of this world as it is, and not just our conceptual knowledge about it? If we orient toward life as if every moment contained the entire earth, how might we be called to behave? I'm curious what this brings up for you. And so I will end with Billy Collins' poem, As If to Demonstrate an Eclipse. I pick an orange from a wicker basket and place it on the table to represent the sun. Then down at the other end, a blue and white marble becomes the earth. And nearby, I lay the little moon of an aspirin. I get a glass from a cabinet, open a bottle of wine, then I sit in a ladder-back chair, a benevolent God presiding over a miniature creation myth. And I begin to sing a homemade canticle of thanks for this perfect little arrangement, for not making the earth too hot or cold, not making it spin too fast or slow, so that the grove of orange trees and the owl become possible. Not to mention the rolling wave, the play of clouds, geese in flight, and the Z of lightning on a dark lake. Then I fill my glass again and give thanks to the trout, the oak, and the yellow feather, singing the room full of shadows as sun and earth and moon circle one another in their impeccable orbits. And I get more and more cockeyed with gratitude. I thank you for your attention and your curiosity to our dear earth.